Well, hello, hello. How's everybody doing tonight? It is a very balmy Thursday here in Texas, and I assume most of America. Um, so I hope you're all staying cool, staying inside, staying in the shade at least. Um, it's my favorite day. It's Thursday. That means we're going to be talking more about Laser Wolf. I think that's a band. Uh, Space Wolf, which is a property near Skinwalker Ranch. We're going to be continuing our review of the Realm of the Fallen episode of the Confessionals podcast, which is a fantastic podcast. If you've never checked it out, look into it. It's really fun. A lot of interesting stuff. This guy Tony Merkel talks to somebody interesting in every episode. They've had an experience or they have some kind of knowledge about paranormal, supernatural, however you want to classify all of this stuff. I mean, like literally every episode is something crazy that I never would have thought I would have heard somebody give like an hour long, essentially lecture about. Is there either their experience or like I said, something that they've just like researched quite a bit. But yeah, so we're gonna be continuing on our review of this episode. Ben's back. How's Ben?
I'm back. Yeah, so last week when we started covering this, we found out about a few things, learned about a few things. What was that thing called? Inference or transference? Syndrome?
It is interference syndrome.
Interference syndrome, which was interesting. Never heard about that before.
Yeah, and a really interesting phenomenon.
The effects that that area had on people. And Tony talked about how his cameraman, who had like a knee injury or something,
bad knee, yeah,
while he was on the ranch, like did not need to wear his brace and was running around like he was gonna need knee surgery, and he was like running around just fine.
And then kind of weird, like as soon as they leave that area, or maybe not as soon, but like a couple of weeks afterwards, the knee issues start coming back.
Right.
And you start kind of feeling the effects of wear and tear again. So I think wasn't there like an X-Files episode that was kind of like that, like those kids that found that cave where they got superpowers for a little bit.
Ooh, I don't remember that episode.
You remember that episode? These high school kids, they I think it was called Rush. Now, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm remembering about that episode. They go into this cave where there was like a crashed UFO or something like that. And once they enter this like field and they exit that field, they get super speed, basically. And they move faster than anyone can see them. The problem is that it tends to like wear out your joints and stuff because you're still moving extremely fast. So these kids have like the bones of 70-year-olds, but they're barely like 16, 15.
That sounds familiar.
But yeah, like that. I guess it's the same concept. Is like it sort of like alters your physiology when you enter this area, this field of paranormal.
Yeah. So once again, this is about Space Wolf research, which is putting up against Skinwalker Ranch, where there's all kinds of paranormal activity on this location as well. So you ready to jump back into it?
Let's go.
Alrighty. I think we left off around the 38-minute mark. So
something like that.
Just kind of like, you're just like, great, it happened here. No way. What?
Wow.
So
yeah. So I'm going to have to get in touch with them because those stories need to be heard. Wow. Yeah. I mean, when we went out there, we had some weird experiences on the property, and I don't know if this is the right word, but I'm going to say it anyways for lack of other words. It's a magical place. When you get there, and maybe it's because you know the history of the area, it's been so documented, you feel like you're entering into a new realm. You feel like you're entering into the go zone, and you don't know what's going to happen, but you're like, something's going to happen. And things did happen for us, and we were out there for an entire week. Those guys, they were out there for a weekend. They had that stuff happen. But hey, when you're doing blood rituals, like, hey, let's see what happens. Like, okay, knock on the door and somebody will answer. So it seems like that's what happened with them. I can't imagine the crab. Geez, like that caught me off guard when you said that. I was like, a crab, like what? But again, we're talking about, you do certain things, these rituals or whatever. We're talking about interdimensionalism. We're talking about other realms, parallel universes, and there are things that operate in these other realms that do know how to access our realm. It's not a two-way door for us, but for them, it is. And so when you start knocking on the door, you don't know how to get through. They'll just come over, they'll answer, they'll come through, say what's up, and they'll go back.
Ben, I think you're muted.
I am muted. I just
Surprise.
realized that. Big surprise. No, so I paused it right there because he said it's not a two-way door for us, but I feel like there have been some missing 401 stories that kind of lead you to believe that possibly there are portals opening up where people are getting lost in.
I guess you could say, like, well, it's maybe more of like a trap door situation where, like, we don't intentionally do it, but we can cross over to the other side. Whereas maybe these creatures, maybe they intend to do it at least sometimes, maybe not all of the time.
Yeah, there was that story that took place in Chaco Canyon where this family goes to it's the Chaco Canyon, New Mexico area, I believe.
Yeah.
And they're on a trip, like a little field trip and family vacation, and they're walking around, and their son is just like 10 feet ahead of them or so. And he disappears. And to this day, they don't know where he went. And he was one of the missing 401 stories.
Yeah. Yeah, that's scary. You always hear about these stories where, like, something pulls you away, like for one reason or another, you like get separated, and it's almost seems like the purpose is for your party or your traveling companions, whatever, to take their eyes off of you so you can disappear.
Right.
Like it's rare to hear like it happens right in front of somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, we should cover some of those missing 401 cases. Some of those are really interesting. All right, let's get back to this.
Yeah.
Back. And sometimes they take you with them, and people are like, "Oh yeah, come on, no, I'm serious." And that's a future episode coming. So it gets wild and weird. But man, so we were out there, and I've said this before, so I'll say it here. We uncovered what seems to be some dark witchcraft, black magic, however you want to say it. And you and I were talking about stuff before we started recording. You kind of mentioned a similar thing. What were you referring to when you mentioned about the dark magic and witchcraft you guys have been kind of uncovering?
Much of the same things I believe you saw are still in operation. And I've encountered literally people who aren't supposed to be there. But it's really difficult to go up to to a Native American couple and tell them to leave, right? Since this was all kind of their land originally. But I did encounter a couple that was, for lack of a better word, in an area they shouldn't have been, under a tarp, and one of them was walking with a very large canine. And interestingly, what they were doing is uncertain, but it did look as if it was witchcraft. And, the interesting thing is I never saw the couple together. It was always one of them and a large canine. So it was either the woman and a large canine or the man and a large canine, but I never saw the two of them and the large canine. So it's some of these strange things that explicitly, they were aware of my presence.
That is so vague. I don't understand what the situation was that he could only see one of them at a time.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's so vague on a lot of things. Like he doesn't know how to describe what he's seen.
Yeah. I mean, you get the idea of what he's driving at, but it does seem like intentionally very vague on what he's doing. It's almost like he's trying not to say things that he sees.
Right. And if you're not going to say anything, what's the point in coming on a show called Confessionals?
Right.
Where you're supposed to confess and say the things
right
you would normally say. But all right, here we go.
I was aware of their presence, and that is what it is. There was a certain amount of respect, I think, both ways, and at the same time, there's other stuff taking place by other people practicing dark adept ritual magic. So it's very bizarre. And I just want to touch really quick on what you said, because during the day you go out to this area and it just seems like any other area, but once night starts to fall, you can almost feel that precognitive sentient intelligence rolling up its sleeves, right? You can kind of feel that added layer of reality or unreality kind of setting in. And so I think it's really cool that you say that, because I find that very harrowing when darkness starts to settle in. You do feel this like this extra layer of high strangeness.
This is the van.
Yeah.
Well, at least it wasn't about peeing blood sugar.
No, this time.
Yeah, I'll let that play in the background.
No. Now it is interesting. He says like once it gets dark, you get more of a sense of the supernatural stuff. But the stories I've heard, like that's one of the most intriguing things about it, is that it didn't matter if it was nighttime, daytime, how many people were around. It didn't care. And it's so rare you find out situations where like the phenomenon doesn't care who's around or who's looking or what time of day it is.
The story of the Gormans when they first moved in with that dire wolf approaching them, that happened during the daytime, like broad daylight.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
In front of everybody. They were all there.
They all saw it. Yeah.
All right, let's keep going.
And it's so true. I mean, I think it was our first night there. It had to be our first night there, is when we found the ritual circle. And I was hanging cameras and we found this thing, and it seems like that kicked off the night, because Ward and I took pictures of it, and we came back to camp and we started showing the guys, and this is all in the film. You see us showing the pictures, and then as we're sitting around the fire showing the pictures, the sky lights up. And I'm talking for a very long time. I want to say probably 2-3 hours. It was just constant UFOs in the sky like crazy. And not to mention the week before we got out there, I think it was, I get the timeline wrong on this sometimes, so I'm not sure. And I might have misrepresented it in the movie, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. But before we got there, I think it was the week before we got there, you at least called me to tell me that the container trailer on the property actually lifted and moved on the property. And people will see how this all unfolded. And we called big machinery companies to see if anybody rented anything, a crane or something in the area to be able to move this. And nobody's had any record of any kind of machinery to be able to come on the property, let alone the way the property's set up. And people to come on and do that, it would be very loud. It would be large. It would take time. And your property manager would have seen it. They would have had to go right by his house, to get on the property. As a former truck driver, that thing's coming in on a trailer, and to get that trailer on the property would have been a pain in the butt because of the way the fencing is right there. So the way I would have done it is I would have backed my trailer into the property so I can have an out easy. And so I would have been spending time on the road, getting my truck and trailer realigned several times just to get it to be able to swing into the property, to back it down the driveway right by the house, a big diesel motor. There's no way he would have missed that. And so the fact that this thing was lifted and moved, and the way it was lifted and moved, because it wasn't lifted very high because of the markings on the rocks. And so it was just enough to be able to lift this, was it 40-foot container, and move it and then turn it sideways. Really phenomenal stuff. All right, for our last sponsor today, we have HelloFresh, and I'm recording out of the house right now. And my wife just walked by.
Try to blame a little bit while this plays.
At first, you would have been pretty protective of the property.
There we go.
How do you view this property now? Because I know you want to be respectful of the native aspect. I mean, Johnny is a native, and he was, I think you gave him to us to have him show us around that week. So you want to be respectful, but at the same time, you're trying to uncover the secrets of this area. And it's just, and just to stress people, like, this property is a symptom of the area. It's not the property. Just like the other property, it's not the property, it's the area. And these properties are symptoms of that. And so has your perspective changed in the sense that you're more open to let more different types of research come on the property and try different things? Are you more protective, less protective? I probably over time probably would have gotten more protective, to be honest with you.
That's exactly right. That's what happened. When I first got it, I was calling all my friends, come on out, guys. This is so cool. And that has changed. As time has gone on, I've realized the severity of the truth of what can take place out there. And yet at the same time, I originally wanted it to be sort of a place where, getting back to the large canines, a lot of the ranchers and farmers in the area, for good reason, they just blast anything that's a canine no matter what. And there's a long history of that taking place at the neighboring property as well, talking with the security guards. And so originally, I guess I kind of had a tree hugger mentality of, hey, I just want to have a spot where, it's like a rest area for even the high strangeness if it needs to kind of be in a safe spot. And so I have a no firearm policy on the property. And there's other reasons to that as well I'll go into, because it turned into the OK Corral there for a while when the caretakers were armed. And I mean, there was shooting going on all the time because of the high strangeness. So in a way, I wanted it to be sort of a designated timeout space for everything. And that has stayed true to form in a way, because as I said, it's expanded a little bit. The property's grown a little, and I've interacted with and had dealings with other research partners, which have varying methods of interpretation on what's taking place there. So, for example, people doing consciousness studies, delving into technologies that interact with the brain, allowing it to kind of peek behind the veil. And a lot of these are well documented. God helmets, Anja lamps, Pandora stars. These technologies exist, and a lot of places have tendrils of interaction with these research partners, including the Monroe Institute, the Bigelow Institute for Consciousness Studies, etc. So I'm very open to research as long as there's a dialogue and an interaction, but not everybody sees things the same way. And this kind of comes back to when you were asking me if I was a Christian, because, some of these individuals, research partners, organizations, and even, like I mentioned, the Native Americans that I saw possibly doing occult practices, I I need to be open to the hierarchy of the reality of what is taking place. And what I mean is, it's like there's a circus going on, and I have my belief system like you do, where we've picked our team and we have our political, spiritual agenda. But at the same time, there's this circus going on because the place is technically like a paranormal Disneyland. I have to respect the fact that there is a hierarchy of this going on, and in this realm of possibly fallen spiritual characters as well. And there is so much taking place that to get a true bead on what's happening, I don't think you can be closed-minded. And so I do have conversations, I interact, I respect things that other people bring to the table. That being said, at the end of the day, I get to practice what I preach and do what I believe is right. But, it is much like a spiritual thing. You have your favorite candidate, but the only way you can really affect the way things happen in society is to still have conversations with the quote unquote enemy, or, the political character that you probably would not want to be running things. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but some of these groups, especially traditionally, who are involved with sort of the nuts and bolts research with investigating the phenomenon, have found that there is a precognitive sentient intelligence that roams the landscape. And for lack of a better word, that is something that knows what you're going to do before you do it, knows what you think as soon as it enters your mind. And it's not omnipotent like the guy we call boss. It's not omnipotent like God, but it's definitely going to be a God with a small g. They have a hidden agenda, and for lack of a better word, have the creativity of fallen angels. So, that term precognitive sentient intelligence was actually coined by John B. Alexander, a colonel. And he also delved deeply and interacted with many people who would be called Satanists. Anton LaVey. And you'll find this with Jacques Vallée as well. Hal Puthoff was definitely involved with all kinds of things like Scientology. So you have to accomplish a really good picture of what's taking place and get a good view of what's happening, you have to be open to kind of, at least touching base occasionally with some of these organizations, individuals, and people who have different belief systems than myself. I don't know if that even answered the question.
Well, it doesn't matter. It was fantastic.
I don't think it answered any questions.
No, I don't know what he said.
That was a word salad, man. He was dancing around what he wanted to say without saying it. Mm-hmm. Pretty non-committal with his spirituality as he is with his descriptions of things that go on.
Yeah, that's kind of a mess. Yeah, that's kind of weird that maybe, I don't know if he just doesn't know what Christianity is or what.
Probably not.
Like maybe he just believes in a God, but not necessarily.
Because it's one thing to say I'm a Christian, but I'm open to the possibility of there being aliens.
Yeah.
But it's another thing to say I kind of a Christian, but I gotta talk to Satanists, and it's like, no, talk to Satanists. Yeah. No one's saying you can't. Yeah, that was a word salad there. Word Olympics. Interesting. But him talking about all this made me remember the attacks that are happening in Peru. Have you heard about that?
The attacks? No.
Yeah, so we just talked about it on Sunday on 6x6, but I'd heard about it before. As a matter of fact, Timothy Alberino, he has a video on it. So in Peru, there's these they're calling them pelacaras, which is Spanish for face peelers.
They look good.
Yeah, and there's this village in Peru where these 8-foot creatures are taking their women and children, and so the men are kind of marching around their village with AK-47s and guns and pistols and stuff to ward off these creatures so that their families can sleep at night.
Wow.
And they're saying they're 8 feet tall, and they look like they're wearing astronaut suits.
Mm-hmm.
And when they shoot at them, the bullets like just bounce off them, or they just like disappear. And I think they even have video footage of one of them flying around, like hovering or something.
Yeah.
And so when the investigators came in, because they sent in like, honestly, like U.S. did send in like military people to come investigate. What they discovered, or what they're saying, is that it's like the local miners that are trying to scare off the villagers. And so there's just kind of this joke, like, seriously, like the local miners have jetpacks and they're flying around.
It's like an episode of Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. Yeah, and they've got like these big round shoes that have like a red disc underneath them that allow them to hover, apparently. But yeah, it's really interesting. And Timothy had a video on his. I haven't seen it yet, but I think it's the same one that we saw when I was on 6x6, because they played like a TikTok video of this guy whose head, like the skull, is completely peeled, wiped clean. It looks like a decoration you go buy at a Halloween store, like Spirit of Halloween or something.
Yeah.
But like he's got a body, but the head is just picked clean. And it's interesting. I don't know. It looked fake to me, but now that I hear Timothy Alberino talking about it, that he's got the video on it, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe it is real. Maybe it is legit. I don't know.
I hadn't heard about that. That's in Peru, you said?
Yeah, it's in Peru.
Oh.
Yeah, and yeah, maybe we'll talk about it next time.
Yeah.
But no, I just seeing this imagery as well, like while all this conversation is going on about this ranch, it's making me think about all that too.
Yeah.
But anyways, let's keep going with this.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the question was. I'm just listening. No, and I understand. And everybody has their own viewpoints and perspectives to go with. And like, so your perspective, what you just shared, personally, on the surface, I would have a hard time with, for me to with my property. At the same time, you're not living on the property, because like it's not like you're going to let somebody come to your house to do this stuff, right? Like you don't even live in the same state as this property, and so it's like, so I understand your perspective, and if you bought the property to be researched, you're trying to let research take any avenue research takes to get understanding, and so I can understand. What you said fallen spiritual characters, and I was like, what? And then you said fallen angels. I'm like, what? And then you're like, small g gods. I'm like, Psalm 82. Like, so like, wow. So it's what I find interesting here is, so what you're saying is you think that on the property, the area, old ancient small g god or gods might be possibly responsible, or at least partly responsible for this? Are they working with fallen angels? In your perspective, you're not God, you don't know, but from your perspective, are you referring to fallen angels exclusively? Are you referring to small g gods working with fallen angels, or what?
Okay, I'll try to. So the semantics is where the hangups are. That is kind of the thorny area where a lot of research gets hung up and it doesn't move forward. So the semantics are something I try to ignore, but you also have to be able to communicate what you're talking about. So yeah, yes, in my rational approach to the whole thing is the wild idea that, it comes back to like, what would Jesus do, right? And he was never afraid of any of these demonic entities. In fact, engaged with them to the best of his ability, because at the end of the day, his job was to not only analyze the situation, but to act in a way that was correct. And so when I'm speaking with others, I say definitely, be careful of some of these occult belief systems. I don't purport that they're good. At the same time, in another direction, when it comes to the research, I think it's important to realize, you're quite literally mapping out what's taking place in the area. And there's some history that warrants the fact that Native American tribes were battling. Something that was considered unforgivable took place between two of these tribes, the Ute and the Navajo. The Navajo have always been very passive, very, kind of the what would Jesus do type. Yet this unforgivable transgression was seen as something that could not be forgiven. And they literally unleashed a curse of quite literally the darkest entity that they could imagine. And that was the Skinwalker, which is going to have godlike, with a small g, capabilities of shape-shifting and basically causing havoc. And this has kind of the whisper of legend and all of that, but it's highly documented, not only through verbal tradition. I mean, for over 15 generations, the natives can tell you that there's been already sort of a rift in the area. So this was just the prime location to kind of Oppenheimer this and just blow it up, right? And go figure, as time has gone on, this has proven to be more and more accurate, that they literally opened Pandora's box or a portal for some of these darker entities to engage in our reality, because everything that sort of can go wrong has gone wrong in the area. You had the first band of buffalo soldiers were sent to literally, keep a hold of this fort in Fort Duchesne and keep the natives there under control. And they had their long list of occult practices, because many of them were from the West Indies. They were very familiar with voodoo. They were, for the most part, all Prince Hall Masons. So they had the Masonic devotee magic that they knew of. They also practiced other occult West Indian magic. And then you had the natives that were there practicing their dark practices. Again, they didn't like each other. That's where they got the term buffalo soldiers. The natives would call them buffalo soldiers because their hair appeared to them to be as that of a buffalo. So you had all kinds of a mishmash of dark curses going back and forth. Then fast forward to the Utah Central Water Project, not only damming Bottle Hollow Reservoir, which has its own dark history, but then putting massive power lines. From an electromagnetic standpoint, this is like the worst thing you could do, right? Over this porous Red Rock Mesa, which already has water that shouldn't be there, seeping through it, and then electrified with this massive power line project. Basically, everything that can go wrong has gone wrong there. And then add to it the phenomena that government happened to just be, for lack of a better word, testing their own exotic toys right there in the same area. It becomes quite literally a paranormal Disneyland, where everything from, sorcerous Native American ritual to, the closest thing we can come to it from a government black budget perspective, and everything in between. It becomes just the alchemy of the area turns into a historical smorgasbord of dark release. So Pandora's box basically getting opened, and, for lack of a better word, it seems to be the realm of the fallen is what I would call it. It's an area where if you are an entity, a something that has godlike characteristics, but you're not on that hierarchical level where you are the big G. It is a place where these things seem to be able to interact with our reality a lot more easily.
Here, Navy SEALs 3.
Wow. That was a lot just to say, yeah. Yes, Tony.
I forgot the question, dude.
Tony was asking him about the fallen. Was he talking about fallen angels and the big G, little G?
Yeah.
Did he think that the little G gods were working with the fallen?
Mm-hmm.
That was his question.
Okay.
But yeah, and then he went on with his smorgasbord of words.
You said Pandora's box like 6 times.
Yeah. and paranormal Disneyland about 3 times.
And for lack of a better word, I think he just needs a bigger vocabulary because he falls back on that quite a bit.
Get the Manathosaurus. There's lots of better words in there. Well, kind of going back to what he was saying at the beginning of his response, talking about how these Native Americans were in communication with gods or the fallen. There is some evidence of that with even like the Choctaw, the Chaco Canyon area. Mm-hmm. There's that legend with the Choctaw Indians with the strangers, what they called him, or the gambler, the gambling stranger. Oh, what this guy who comes in and he introduces alcohol, like some kind of alcohol to them and drugs to them. And then once they're all like inebriated, he teaches them gambling. And the story goes, or the legend says that they gamble everything that they own. And at the end, he's like, well, you still have your souls. And so they gamble themselves away. And so they become slaves to this, the stranger or I'm not sure if it was like the gambler or the stranger. It's been a while since I've heard the story.
Yeah.
But essentially they become a slave to this being, I guess, because he's not like a human being.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of attributed some kind of higher power to him in a way.
Yeah. Have you seen there's a documentary on Amazon about the Chaco Canyon. That's Robert Redford narrating it.
No, I haven't seen it yet.
I mean, it kind of looked like one of those documentaries that were like, our natural, state parks are beautiful kind of a thing. Like we're just going to talk about like the natural beauty. I didn't watch it, but maybe it is about like, the darker side of it. But I thought it was weird that it was about the Chaco Canyon. It could have been about anything else, but that specifically, I was like, I wonder if it is about something paranormal. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm probably going to watch it now.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. But yeah, even in Chaco Canyon, they had like these pits dug out where they felt like rituals were taking place in those pits.
Yeah.
And the theory is that they overthrew their captors and set themselves free eventually. But like being around these beings, that they learned something dark from them, some dark workings, whether it's witchcraft or whatever it is, rituals. And then have you ever heard of Loch Love Canyon or Loch Love Cave? And I want to say it's Ohio.
I recognize the name Loch Love, but I don't recognize the.
Yeah, so the story there was that there was giants in the area, which we would call Nephilim.
Mm-hmm.
And these giants were attacking the natives there and eating them. Like they have depictions of them grabbing them and biting their heads off.
Oh, okay. I think,
chugging them like a Coca-Cola on a hot day,
Oh, kind of like that painting of what is it, Cronus? Or what's his name?
Yeah.
Where he's like biting his children, or he's eating his children.
Yeah.
Okay. Are those the ones they said would like pick up buffalo as they were running? And
I think so. I think it's the same
okay.
one.
I think that's probably why I've heard of that before. Yeah.
Yeah. So they ended up like attacking back, like the natives rose up against these giants, and they forced them into this cave where they put a whole bunch of shrubs and they lit it on fire to kill them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought that's interesting. There's lots of connection between Native Americans and Nephilim or fallen angels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is interesting.
All right. We got probably like 15 minutes left.
Yeah, I think it is 15 minutes.
There we go.
Oh,
I'm
that's
sitting here
Yeah.
and I'm listening to you talk about this, and I'm really glad we went out there, and I'm really glad we got what we got. But I really want to go back now. Like, I really want to go back now because I want to do something that has never been done on at least publicized on the level that I would publicize it on. And I'm not saying I'm some head honcho, whatever, but we have a good thing going here. And I want to find out what happens when you wage spiritual warfare for an entire week out there, where I take my God, Jehovah, and try to smack around these fallen angels and these little G gods and see what happens. I want to like engage in some serious spiritual warfare out there. I'm talking some heavy, long hours of fasting and praying and seeing if we can, what comes of that. Does that spiritual warfare overflow into this realm, to the physical, visible realm that we could experience? Is there repercussions that come from that, because it is a war, and it's a war because both sides smack around? Like, you know what I'm saying? I want to see what happens on that level. Like, if you have people going out there and they're doing their thing, performing rituals, whatever, I want to do mine. For an entire, we typically go and we put ourselves in environments and see what happens. As Christians, we pray on scene. We did it there. But what happens if we don't just sit there to wait and see what happens, but actively engage and try to fight back these ancient gods? Man, let's go. I'm telling you, man, like, I want to see what happens. I don't know when it's going to happen, but but it's something that I'm very interested in. You listen, you just named the episode "The Realm of the Fallen." I gotta work that into the title somehow. But this might be a misremembering of sorts, but I want to kind of bring things in for a landing here, mainly because I'm working on school hours now, and I got to pick up my son here soon from school. But I vaguely remember you. It might have been before. I think it might have been after we shot, though. You contacted me about something to do with the ground. Was the ground splitting open or something like that? Was that after we left, or was that before? I don't remember.
Both. And it is, yeah, it's very strange because it will open up in a very dark way. And quite literally, it is like the underworld is just opening up, and you'll get these 25, I think the deepest one we've measured is about 52 feet. They keep getting deeper, but it'll open up 3 to 5 feet in some cases. You can see down there. We've lowered stuff with like cables, cameras and stuff, and flashlights at night. And I mean, it's extraordinary. It goes way deep. And then within a matter of days, it'll close back up. You never knew it even happened. And these things are like long, huge cracks in the earth, and then they'll close right up. So from like the mythology perspective, not only, Native American, but also other mythologies that have to do with the underworld, this takes on a whole other idea. And I don't doubt for a minute that, there is something dark taking place, because even the top levels of government is split on this. You have one section of the military industrial complex, very powerful Christian sect known as the Collins elite, that says, hey, all this stuff is demonic. Don't engage. Don't mess with it. Leave it alone. And then you have the other side, which is more the invisible college, is what they call themselves. And they are more of the belief system.
Well, the Collins elite is split themselves. Half of them says, don't mess with it. The other half says, let's talk to them by doing ritual sacrifices.
What is the Collins elite?
The Collins elite was a group of volunteers before there was any kind of official task force, government task force set in place to investigate these kind of paranormal activities. And I want to say this started back when after Jack Parsons did his Babylon working. Yeah. And they started to see a lot more UFO activity. And so they went out to the desert to investigate. And they discovered that it was demonic forces. And so, so they're split amongst that group. No, half of them says, let's back away. Let's not have anything to do with this. We know it's not aliens. Now we know it's interdimensional beings. These are demons.
Yeah.
And then you got the other half that is saying, okay, now that we know they're demons, we can look at Jack Parsons' work, look at Aleister Crowley's work, and let's communicate with these things and see what they want.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, the Collins elite is not, as a whole, agreed upon sect, saying we're all Christians and we all, yes, they all believe that these are demons.
Right.
They're all unison in that. But they're not in unison as to how to deal with it.
System that, hey, it's a Jurassic Park, where they're trying to use the dinosaurs as weapons.
Yeah, basically.
All right. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know. I'd never heard of them before.
Yeah.
It's okay to at least let it play and analyze what it's doing. And that's sort of, in my belief system, what you said is really true. Practicing heavy Christianity, it would be, in my opinion, it's kind of unfair. And that sounds really bad. I almost feel sorry for some of the phenomenon, because it just gets crushed.
Let's go
by our God, right? And that's kind of why, it is like watching something, watching a creature, or watching, I just want to see how it does its thing. But no, as far as, in my opinion, it doesn't stand a chance, compared to the power of our spiritual belief system. But at the same time, I feel as if it is intrinsically interesting, and it's unique, and it's sort of beautiful to see it try, to see it. And a lot of this stuff is prophesized, in all kinds of different cultures, that these intrinsic energies will engage as phenomena, because that's all they can do. They're going to seep through anywhere they can, and they're going to engage in ways that are trickery. It's nothing more than trickery, because they are not divine, but they do manifest into our world in ways that are very unique. And I mean, holy cow, I'm with you 100%. It's unbelievable.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And for me,
just taking too long to talk.
I'm on a mission in my life to engage in these realms, and to through conversation, through documentary, through experience, to raise awareness and show the world that the spiritual, supernatural realm exists. It is very real. It is here. It is operating all around you at all times. And we often live our lives in a default way where we do not acknowledge it on a daily basis. I'm a weirdo. My job is to do this. And so daily, I remind myself that, this is real. But for most people, it is something that every once in a while they are reminded of, possibly in church on a Sunday. They stumble across a TV show that gets their head scratched and they do a quick Google search. They find an interesting article about something ancient. They're like, oh, that was interesting. And they put it on the shelf and they go back to watching, basketball or something like that. For me, I'm on this mission to expose the realities of this stuff, and good and bad. And so I'm very, very excited about what you're doing, what has been going on the property. I think that everybody finds their place in life. And I think you found a very unique place in life to pursue. You were into the paranormal before, and this has just kind of amplified everything. And it's interesting to see where it all goes from here. Boy, I'll tell you, man, like the more I do this show, the more I talk to people like you and people who've had experiences, the interdimensional realm, the thing on the other side of the veil, however you want to look at it, portals, gateways to other parallel universes, it's becoming so real to me that I don't even realize how weird I sound when I talk about it to people. It just overflows out of me. And let me just tell you, I was at a media conference this past weekend, a Christian media conference called Armed Christian Media Conference. And it's all about learning as Christians how to properly utilize social media, YouTube, and be better at this stuff and meet people where they're at, right? Well, the person hosting the whole event and putting it on was Pastor DiDio, and he was on our show, I believe, episode 540. We called it Portals to Hell and Biblical Super Soldiers. And he's hosting this event, and he tells me about it. So I got tickets for my brother and I to go out and learn. And he upgraded our tickets from general to like top-notch VIP. We were having lunch with all the speakers and just hanging out with them the whole time. And it was really interesting. But I was sitting in this VIP room having dinner, and this is a room full of like pastors and Sean Cannell from Think Media was there and his team. And we're all sitting around a table and they're talking about different things. And somebody said something. Maybe they said like a key phrase or something that triggered my brain. Maybe they said Nephilim or something. I don't know. But like all of a sudden I found myself going, blah, and I just started going. And I'm like, you guys have to understand this is real. And I'm like, this is what I do. And I'm just going. And I noticed that other people started gravitating towards the table, and the crowd around the table started growing, and the conversation starts jumping back and forth. And all of a sudden I'm not the main facilitator of the conversation. It's just going and going. And it was like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, wow, this actually happened because I can't keep my mouth shut. And that's because it's so real to me. This stuff is so real. And I pray that it always is this real to me, because I think that there's a reason why I'm here doing this stuff. I think there's a reason why you're doing what you're doing. I think there's a reason why we're connected and we're becoming friends, because we have our own roles in this. And at the end of the day, exposing the reality of this realm is the bottom line. Finding the answers to questions. And why do we do that? To expose it, to show the world it's real. And so that's what you're doing at Space Wolf Research, man. And I applaud you for it. I think it's awesome. I think it's really cool that you let us come out and film there. And I hope to make it out there one day again. Before we get out of here, tell people, man, where they can find your stuff. I know you do Hero Paranormal. Is that the podcast? Is that still going?
I'll stop it there.
That's about it. Yeah.
So what are your overall impressions?
Overall impressions, this dude, he needs to start over. It's like we were saying. He's a little too vague. I feel like I didn't really get much out of that in terms of like what his actual experiences were. I mean, there were some like stories in there, like the giant beaver or the giant crab that came out and bit a guy. Like the first half of it seems like that's where we got most of our interesting information.
Yeah.
But the last half of it was like, I don't know. He was just kind of all over the place. He needs to organize his thoughts a little bit better before he comes on to an hour-long show and he's got 30 minutes worth of material.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What did you think?
I thought some of it, like you said, the first half of it was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But even then, like some of that stuff was, oh, like, have you ever heard of this podcast? Well, they went out and they had this experience. You should listen to it.
Yeah.
They had a crazy experience. It was very H.P. Lovecraft, like
Yeah.
this indescribably scary monster. Just picture it.
Yeah.
Picture it. So I don't have to describe it. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that happened a lot at this interview.
Mm-hmm.
No, but I'm just always interested in Skinwalker Ranch and now this place. I mean, only because it's in proximity and it's a place people can still go explore.
Right. It's a very rare place. Like we were saying, like so much stuff goes on there in such a small area, like relative to like other places like the Bridgewater Triangle, where you get like UFOs, you get like ghost activity, you get puckwudgies and stuff like that. But it's such a large place. Like it's kind of understandable that you would have so many different things happen in that kind of area. Whereas with Skinwalker Ranch, you get that variety, but in very small, pinpointed geographic locations.
Yeah.
Really interesting stuff.
Yeah, interesting location.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Well, I think we're going to call it a night here.
Yep.
We went just about an hour. It's 57 minutes. Not bad.
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah. I think it helped that I sped it up there. I think I need to do that next time we do this.
Yeah. At least if the guy's droning on a little bit.
Yeah. I'm not sure what we want to talk about next week. I know I had mentioned I can't remember his first name. His last name's Sailors, but
Jeff
Sailors?
Something? Is it?
Maybe.
Something like
Jeff or John. Jeff or John Sailors. But yeah, he's this guy who worked at Buffalo Ranch and had some UFO experiences out there, and I thought that were interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can do that next week.
Yeah, possibly. Did you listen to the latest episode of Beliefful?
No, I didn't actually. Okay, well, that's not entirely true. I put it on so I could go to sleep. So I heard like the first 15 minutes of it. With the UAP stuff.
Yeah, the UAP stuff. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And they covered some of the congressional hearings.
Yeah.
I was listening to that today. But I'll think about it. We'll see what we'll cover next week.
Yeah.
But I'm enjoying doing this. It's fun.
It is fun.
Even if nobody's watching.
No, but if anybody does watch, thank you. Also, if you have suggestions for things you want to hear us talk about or something you want to participate in too in the comments, just let us know.
Yeah, if there's any topics you want us to go over, dig into, we'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we're going to call it a night. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Have a good night, everybody.